In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, Caught in a Lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 82 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
What's happening, man?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
I am doing real good. Getting ready for another episode of TCAT.
Yeah?
Always have fun recording.
Always.
Now, the research is tough.
Yeah, it's always...
It's kind of like playing basketball or football or any sport. Remember back in high school, practice, not so much fun, but game time, that was always a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely was fun.
And that's kind of how this is, right? The research and all of that is leading up to the fun part.
So it's game time.
It's game time.
Game time.
Let's start out with some new Patreon supporters.
Okay.
We had Sherry Riley jump out to our highest level.
Awesome. Thank you.
Jason Lee Smith used all three names.
Every one of them.
Jessica Britton.
Hey, Jessica.
Melinda Valradian.
Valradian.
That's good. I like that. Carrie Palmer.
Carrie?
Dana Scarpula.
Oh, the Scarpula.
I swear, any chance for you to do a Mario Luigi accent,
Hey.
you will take it.
It's good stuff, man.
Jared Foster.
Jarrett.
Sandy Moss.
Kind of like, resort. Where you going this weekend?
I'm going to Sandy Moss.
There you go. See? Fits right in.
Jacob Hughes. Mary Petrowski jumped out at our highest level.
The Petrowski.
Mandy Hudson.
Thank you, Mandy. Like in, old Mandy. Not old. Like
Old
Mandy.
And you definitely did not say "ol" that time. There was a D in it. I know for a fact. And everybody listening, hit the rewind button right now and you will hear it.
It's old Mandy. Like the song, Barry Manilow.
The song is not Old Mandy.
What is Mandy? Hey, Mandy. Hey, Mandy.
I think it's just called Mandy, isn't it?
I think it's Hey, Mandy.
I mean, he might be saying some other words, but the title is just Mandy.
You sure?
I'm not positive.
You don't know.
I'm not a Barry Manilow aficionado, but I'm pretty sure the song is just Mandy. But
I think it's Old Mandy.
Old Mandy. You think he named the song Old Mandy?
Not old. Oh,
Oh, now without the D.
all right. I'll leave it alone. They'll let us know. They always let us know.
They always do. Charlotte Grissom
Cool.
and Doug Niemeyer jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Doug.
Doug, who just had his birthday last week, his daughters called in, and Doug got with me. He was over the moon, man, about the shout out, about the voicemail from his daughters. He loved it.
Over the moon, huh?
He was over the moon. And he said he couldn't let them outdo him. He had to, step up and be a Patreon member.
And he did.
He had to have them show him how to do it, he said, but he got it done.
That's all that matters in the end.
Exactly. If we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Joe Farrar. Joe is huge for us on social media.
Yeah.
Been a long-time supporter, big time
has.
supporter of the show.
Definitely appreciate you.
Yep, we definitely appreciate Joe. And we appreciate all of our new Patreon supporters and those people that continue to support us month after month. And we had some PayPal support too. So I definitely want to give them a big shout out. We had Slats McCracker.
McCracker?
Slats McCracker.
Slats McCracker. Okay. Thanks, Slats.
Jennifer Glassford.
Hey, Jennifer.
Kelly Holiday.
She's a vacation.
Joanne Paventa.
Actually, Kelly could be a guy or a girl.
That's true. You don't know.
So he could be a vacation. I don't know.
Either one. Somebody's a vacation.
Somebody's a vacation because they're a holiday.
Joanne Paventa.
Hey, Joanne.
And Karen Siefker.
Siefker?
Siefker. So big shout out. Much appreciation for the PayPal donations.
Love it.
And don't forget about True Crime All the Time Unsolved. Right now, there's an episode out on that we're calling The Polaroid Picture. And this is somewhat of a famous true crime Polaroid picture, Gibbs.
It is.
It shows two young people, a girl and a boy, with their mouths duct taped shut. And the mystery, it starts from there. All right, Gibby, my man, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
Yeah, let's do it.
We are talking about Keith Hunter Jesperson, who, as a long-haul trucker, murdered at least 8 from the years 1990 to 1995. He was born in Canada, but he moved to and he committed his murders in the U.S. And Jesperson gets labeled as the happy face killer. And we'll get into this in much more detail, but it's because he signed his letters with a smiley face. But not to be confused with the smiley face killer or killers.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if, maybe some people might get that confused.
I think you could. I think you could get it confused. The smiley face killer or killers, that's an unsolved case. We'll probably do that on True Crime All the Time Unsolved at some point. They don't know how many people are involved in that. But Jesperson is the happy face killer, even though technically he signed his letters with a smiley face. And Gibbs, I've always been fascinated by the long haul trucker type of killer. Traveling from city to city in a way that most killers can't do or don't have the ability to do, or, it's not that easy for them. We've covered some. We did Wayne Adam Ford, but there are a lot of long haul trucker serial killers. We also just happen to have a lot of trucker fans, listeners that are truckers. So I've just always thought that this would be an extremely easy way to be a serial killer.
Yeah, I think it gives you there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of accessibility.
Number one, you have a reason to be
where you're at,
somewhere away from home.
You got a constant alibi in a sense.
And if you're picking victims that you don't know, which is most likely because you're in places that you don't live, much harder to track. Now, I don't know if that holds true today, and I would love for some of our fans that, drive the big rigs to call in and let me know, but I think there is a lot more technology involved, that some of the carriers can pinpoint where their drivers are at all times, and if they haven't made it a certain distance, they know. If they've been driving too long without sleeping, they know. I think it's a lot different than it was back in the day.
Oh, it has to be. I know when I left UPS in the early 90s, they were tracking us with GPS.
Already in the 90s, yeah.
Yeah. So I can't even imagine, how much better it got over the years. So, but those were GPS in our little...
In your short shorts? Did they put GPS in your brown short shorts?
That's a different GPS.
All right, so let's get into Jesperson's upbringing and background. This is where we like to start. Keith Hunter Jesperson was born in Chilliwack, British Columbia.
Chilliwack.
Yeah, I never heard of Chilliwack.
Chilliwack.
It's a cool name, though. Where are you from? Chilliwack.
Chilliwack.
And he was born to parents Les and Gladys Jesperson. And this sounds very familiar, Gibbs, but his father was described as an alcoholic who was extremely strict. He was controlling. He liked to put down the members of the family. Now, Keith had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and age-wise, he was right in the middle of those 4. And even though his father put down the kids, it's talked about that Keith was treated much worse than his siblings. So he didn't receive as much attention from his father as they did, but the attention that he did receive was often very harsh, very critical. He was beaten with a belt, which, back in that day is not that strange.
No.
But a lot of times it was almost as if this was a show because it happened in front of other people. So anytime he acted up, he would be beaten. And a lot of times it was in front of whoever was there, I guess, or whatever audience they could find. From a very early age, probably when Keith was 5, 6 years old, it's known that he tortured and killed animals. And the things that he did at this young age were extremely brutal. We've talked a lot about these serial killers harming, torturing, killing animals at young ages. But I don't know if I've ever researched someone that was so sadistic to animals. He would bash gophers' heads in. He would nail small animals to a board, and then he would throw knives at them, or he would take needles and stick them in these small animals. I mean, we're talking about some very sadistic stuff here. Now, we have heard this one before. It's brutal, but Keith Jesperson would tie cats' tails together, and then he would throw them over a line, and they would end up, clawing each other, fighting each other, and he would sit there and watch. He strangled cats and dogs. It's just really hard for me to imagine a 5-year-old being that cruel to animals. But we know, right, Gibbs, from all of our research, this is a very bad sign.
Yeah, really bad sign.
For the future, for things to come. The family would move from Canada to a trailer park in Washington State. His torturing and killing of animals would continue there. He would say years later that as a young child, he thought about what it would be like to strangle a human being, much like he had done so many times to helpless animals. And we have to talk about how big Jesperson is, as a full-grown adult, he's going to be about 6'6", 240.
It's a big boy.
He was a big Buford. But as a kid, he was very big as well. Much bigger than his classmates, the other boys his age. And this caused him to be teased at school, which I never really thought about that. Normally, you think the big kid is not going to get picked on, is not going to get teased. But he's so different from all of his classmates that, they pick up on that and they use it to their advantage to tease him and pick on him. And maybe it's just it's just anything different, right, at that age.
We talk about how kids are all the time,
They can be extremely brutal in that way. I mean, almost masterminds in the way that they can pick out somebody's weakness and exploit it. I always felt bad for other kids in school, Gibbs, that had a name, their last name rhymed with something that was a word that you didn't want your last name to rhyme with. I always felt bad for those kids.
Yeah, because you knew they were going to get picked on, man.
Very hard to rhyme anything with Ferguson.
Ferguson.
Now, don't try to come up with something, but... And Keith's brothers, they didn't really help him out a whole lot in this area. They gave him the nickname Igor, and it stuck. So that the other kids latched onto that. They started calling him Igor at school, and this was very rough on him. He was a shy kid. He kept to himself. He didn't play much with the other kids. he was essentially an outcast. He didn't date girls in school, never attended a dance or a prom. In fact, he would say later on that he was rejected by every girl that he ever liked. Now, by the end of this story, you are not going to feel sorry for Keith Jesperson. But you know, it's important to talk about the background, the history. How did they grow up? And for me, I'm seeing a lot of signs here, very similar to what we see in a lot of the other cases that we do. Now, around the age of 9 or 10, he had a friend named Martin, which is significant. First of all, I don't think he had many friends.
Okay.
But he did have this friend named Martin around 9 or 10. Apparently, the two of them got into a lot of trouble together, but it was usually Keith who took the blame when things went wrong, including him taking the blame for a lot of things that Martin did. And I guess he received a lot of beatings from his father over this relationship that he had with Martin because they were getting in so much trouble. But the fact that he was taking the blame for things that he didn't even do, it caused something to boil over inside of him. And one day he beat this boy named Martin unconscious.
Wow.
His father had to pull him off of this kid. And Keith Jesperson would later claim that he wanted to kill Martin. And he would have if his father hadn't been there to pull him off. Now, he's 9 or 10 years old.
But a big kid for that age.
But he's big. But that's not the only attempted murder that he committed at a very young age. Because just a year or two later, he's swimming at this lake, and there's another boy there who holds his head under the water. And I guess Jesperson blacked out. He would later say all he saw was black. But he was enraged by what had happened. And he started making plans to get back at this boy. And he found his chance one day at the public swimming pool. And he grabbed this boy's head and held it underwater. And the only reason that this boy survived was because the lifeguard saw what was going on, got down and pulled Keith off of this boy. Again, later on, he's going to say he had made his mind up. He was going to drown this boy. So Gibbs, by the age of 12 or so, give or take, Jesperson has come close to killing 2 other kids and would have if other people had not intervened. So his father, Les, had seen Keith, his son, do some horrible things in his young life. You know, he had witnessed him torturing and killing animals. He witnessed him almost kill this boy, Martin, who he considered a friend. But for some reason, Les thought it was a good idea to give Keith a BB gun as a present. So what does a boy like Keith Jesperson do with a BB gun? Probably the same thing you did with your BB gun when you were younger.
Fun stuff.
Get into trouble.
Yeah. Shoot some windows out.
No, he proceeded to shoot one neighbor in the genitals.
Oh.
He thought that was a good idea.
We used to shoot, our brothers, we used to shoot each other in the rear end,
I'm assuming these weren't high-powered BB guns.
No, these weren't like the ones where you could put the pellet. Remember the pellet guns? Wasn't like that.
Yeah, well, pellets are a little...
Yeah, you had some BB
rougher.
guns that could take BBs or pellets. Those are the ones you would do some damage with.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are more high-powered than others.
Yeah.
So not only does he shoots a neighbor in the genitals, it's not funny. I don't know why I just laughed there a little bit. But he also proceeded to shoot another neighbor in the ass while they were bending over picking up raspberries. This kid's not going to turn out well. In 1969, Jesperson is 14 years old. And he says that he had his first sexual experience at this time. He would later write and describe this encounter as a rape. So by 12, he's tried to kill 2 kids. By 14, he's essentially committed his first rape.
Which is crazy for that age, any age. But I mean, it's just, wow.
the things he's doing at such a young age. I mean, it blows me away. Like you said, it would be horrible at any age, but he graduates from high school in 1973, same year that you did.
Yeah, whatever.
He also graduated 161st out of a class of 174, so just a little bit better than you did.
That's hurting me.
No, Gibby was a Rhodes Scholar. I don't think people know that. He was a four-sport athlete and a Rhodes Scholar.
That was the dream.
Meaning that he did most of his studying out on the road.
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I said he was a Rhodes Scholar. Jesperson didn't go to college, so he's different from you in that respect, Gibbs. You got him there.
I got him.
It was reported that his father said there's no way that he could handle it. So not great fatherly influence, right?
Right.
For Keith Jesperson. So we talked about the fact he didn't date, he didn't, go to dances, but he does get married a few years out of high school to a woman named Rose Huck. They would have 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. And it was during this time frame that he started driving a truck. This was a way that he was going to support this growing family that he has. Keith's mother died in 1985, and it was said that he apparently showed no emotion when this occurred. So he's married, 3 kids, he's driving a truck, but the marriage starts to hit some rocky patches because his wife begins to think that he's having affairs. So after 14 years of marriage, she wants out.
Rose says, no more.
Rose is out of this thing.
The thorn is hit.
And she waits until he's out on the road in his truck, packs up everything, packs up the kids, and heads to Spokane, Washington, moves in with her parents.
Okay.
She just flat out leaves him.
Well, if you're going to leave and don't want confrontation, I guess that's how you do it.
Well, it'd probably be about the best time you could pick. So Jesperson is 35 years old at this point in time. He's all by himself. He has this idea that he's going to get a job as a Royal Canadian Mounted Policeman. So he starts to go through the training. But while he's doing that, he suffers an injury that keeps him from moving forward. So he can't fulfill this dream that he has, and he moves to Cheney, Washington, and he starts driving a truck again. Jesperson's first known victim was a woman named Tanya Bennett, and this occurred on January 23rd, 1990, near Portland, Oregon. So he meets Bennett at a bar, invites her back to his house. They are intimate, but after that happens, an argument breaks out. And Jesperson is, being rough. He's very demeaning. He's calling her names. Tanya's trying to fight back. She's trying to defend herself. But we talked about this guy. 6'6", 240.
Hard to go up against that.
That's hard. That would be hard to defend yourself against, that kind of size.
Yes. Just needs to lean on you, man. Put that weight against you. It'd be hard.
He ends up beating Tanya Bennett severely and eventually grabs her by the neck and wraps a rope around it. He strangled Tanya with the rope, and he would later say, he sat there watching the life leave her body. And boy, we've heard that before.
We have.
People, for a lack of a better word, Gibbs, getting off on seeing the life extinguished in another person. It's still hard to comprehend even after, all of these different cases that we've done.
But that's the thing, man. That's the rush. That's the rush that they get.
It is. And that rush keeps them doing it, right? You don't do things that you don't enjoy or you don't get something out of.
Right.
These twisted people, they get something out of this. Like you said, a rush, a feeling, something that 99 point whatever percent of us would never get. But it's reported that he punched Tanya as many as 20 times to her head and face to the point that she was unrecognizable. It was a massive beating.
It's crazy, man.
So after he killed her, he goes back to the bar and he has a few drinks.
Got to wind down.
But he's also establishing an alibi in case he needs one. So he's making sure that he's talking with the other patrons in the bar. And after he thinks he's done that enough, he goes back, gets Tanya Bennett's body and her belongings and disposes of them. But he's not done, because after he disposed of her body, he goes to a truck stop and he sits at the truck stop and he drinks coffee in yet another attempt to establish an alibi.
Go there, have some coffee.
He wants people to see him, to know that he was there.
Yep.
He's not going to need this alibi.
But if he ever did, he was there to establish it.
Yep. The next day, he's back on the road. And then there's a student from a community college riding her bike down the highway, this north of Portland. She sees a woman lying off the side of the road. The police come. They end up doing an autopsy. And it reveals that this woman had been sexually assaulted. They identify the woman through sketches that were broadcast in the media as 23-year-old Tanya Bennett. Tanya had last been seen alive by her parents a week before her body was found. But as tragic and brutal as this first murder was, Gibbs, there's something additional that I found very disturbing. And it was said that Tanya Bennett was of a diminished mental capacity. Jesperson would later say that this fact sexually excited him.
Really?
Yeah, he would say this. I mean, this is the kind of guy we're dealing with here.
We were drinking beer a lot that day. Took her home. I thought I was going to get lucky. Comments were made and different things, and an altercation happened, and I struck her. I actually had hit her in the face, and for some reason, I just kept on hitting her in the face, and because of that, I feared going to prison for slugging her in the face and causing bodily injury, and so I killed her. I meant to kill her to cover up the assault. It is matter of fact that that's what it is. And I put the body up there in the Columbia River Gorge. I had tied a rope around its neck, mostly I didn't know how the body reacted when you started moving it.
So that is Keith Jesperson.
Did he say around its neck
He
instead
did.
of her neck?
He did.
That's interesting.
And I did. I picked that up too. I thought that was very odd, but maybe not so odd as we go through this story, because I don't think he thought of some of these women as people. So I don't know that his use of the word "it" is that far off for him. I think that's maybe how he really felt.
Yeah, I think so too.
So after this murder, nobody knows who Keith Jesperson is, right? He's not on anybody's radar, but there's a woman named Laverne Pavlinac. She's 57 years old. She reads in the newspaper about Tanya Bennett's death, and she comes up with, in her mind, that this would serve perfectly to end her abusive 10-year relationship with her boyfriend, 43-year-old John Sosnovsky. So this guy, John, he's already on probation for drunk driving. Apparently he was a raging alcoholic. He was a big-time drinker. And Laverne, his girlfriend, she had a habit of calling the police on him. Every time they would get in a fight, she would call police and tell them that he did something that he didn't do. Just 8 months before the murder, this is in the spring of '89, she called the FBI and told them that John was a bank robber.
Really?
Yeah. So she's really trying to get out of this relationship.
She really is.
And apparently she feels like she just can't leave. She has to do something drastic, I guess. But he's not a bank robber. They investigate him and they clear him. But she calls police after the murder of Tanya Bennett. She tells them about Sosnovsky and the fact that, they get in fights. It's a rough relationship. But then she drops the bombshell. She is turning him in for the rape and murder of Tanya Bennett. And she laid out this very detailed story for detectives that involved John forcing her to help him rape Tanya, dispose of her body, and to cover up evidence of the crime. And like I said, she went into a lot of detail. Now, she had probably gotten a lot of this detail because she was reading everything she could about the case. But she tells detectives about how the rope was placed around Tanya's neck, how John strangled her. So you have to think that they were pretty intrigued by this story. But they searched the home. They didn't find anything that belonged to Tanya Bennett. What they did find was an envelope addressed to John. And on the back of this envelope was written T. Bennett dash a good piece. So that's pretty strange.
Pretty strange.
Now, John denied having anything to do with killing Tanya or writing this message on the back of the envelope, but he is eventually arrested and he's charged with the murder of Tanya Bennett. But Laverne is also arrested and she's indicted for aiding him in the crime. But there were some things that didn't fit. There were witnesses who had reported seeing Tanya at a bar the night she died, which was a pretty good distance away from where Laverne said that John picked her up. This witness went on to say that Tanya was playing pool that night with two men, but when shown a picture of John, the witness said neither of these two guys was him. But things didn't go as Laverne Pavlinac thought they would. She ends up getting convicted. She gets a minimum 10-year sentence for her role that never actually happened. And the minute this happened, Gibbs, she started to reverse course. She told them that, hey, I made this whole thing up, but it was too late. No one believed her at this point because she had been so convincing with her story of what John and she did to Tanya Bennett. But while Laverne is on trial, a message is found in a men's room at a Greyhound bus terminal in Montana. And the message said, I killed Tanya Bennett January 21st, 1990 in Portland, Oregon. I beat her to death, raped her, and loved it. I'm sick, but I enjoy myself too. 2 people took the blame and I'm free. So obviously we know this is Keith Jesperson traveling the country. He stops in the restroom and he writes this message. A few days later, someone finds a message in a truck stop men's room in Oregon. And this message read, I killed Tanya Bennett in Portland. 2 people got the blame, so I can kill again. So very strange, but both of these messages were signed with a happy face. So again, part of where the nickname, the Happy Face Killer, comes in. Now, detectives find out about these messages, but they think that these are friends of John's trying to make it seem as if he couldn't have done it because the killer is still out there. That was their theory at the time. And John is still saying that he didn't have anything to do with this. But when Laverne gets convicted, he gets scared and he ends up cutting a deal, pleading no contest to felony murder and kidnapping. And I don't know, Gibbs, after you see her get found guilty, you have to believe that you're going to be found guilty as well.
Yeah, I think he would have to think that he might be getting convicted. I mean, you would think the odds would be pretty favorable, especially if they work on her the right way to help out the case.
Well, she could end up testifying against him. But whatever he's thinking, he gets a life sentence with parole eligibility after 15 years. So that was his plea deal, which he thought would be better than rolling the dice and taking his chances at trial.
Doesn't make sense. Why would the plea deal be life in prison versus rolling the dice?
I don't know. You could get life with no parole.
Well, I guess it just depends on what the
You
term.
could get death.
You
So
could.
I guess there are some worse alternatives.
That's true. That's true.
And maybe it was the parole after, being eligible for parole after 15 years
Yeah.
was the deal, essentially.
Yeah, I guess I can see that,
Tough to take, though, knowing that you didn't kill this woman.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if you didn't do it, why?
Oh, we get into this argument all the time, though. How many people have confessed to crimes that we later find out they didn't do
Yeah.
because they were in a spot where they knew they were going to be found guilty and they thought, man, I better cut a plea deal.
Yep.
I can't take my chances of life with no parole.
Well, if you can't control the situation, which you can never control, right? You can't control who the jury would be. You can't control all that, So I think you got to lean on your attorney's advice and your gut instinct.
Well, his gut was telling him, I better take this plea deal. And he does. All right, Gibbs, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor, Quip. And you know what I learned in talking to the folks at Quip? Most of us are brushing our teeth wrong. We're not brushing for long enough, and we don't change our brushes when we're supposed to. But Quip is a brand that doesn't focus on flashy gimmicks. Quip is an electric toothbrush that's a fraction of the cost of bulkier brushes, but it packs in just the right amount of vibrations to help clean your teeth. It has a built-in timer to get you to that dentist recommended 2 minutes of brushing. It even tells you when to switch sides. They deliver new brush heads on a dentist recommended schedule, and that's every 3 months for just $5, including free shipping worldwide. I've tried it. I was blown away. This by far is the best I've ever used. I love the timer. I love it telling me when it's time to switch, and I love the bristles. And for me, that's the biggest part. I'm very particular about bristles in a toothbrush. So Quip starts at just $25. And if you go to getquip.com/TCAT right now, you'll get your first refill pack free with a Quip electric toothbrush. That's your first refill pack free at quip.com/TCAT. That's GETQUIP.com/TCAT. And next, let's talk about Hims for a minute. Now, Gibbs, who's better qualified than me to talk about Hims? 66% of men lose their hair by age 35. I am definitely in that category. The problem is, when I started noticing my hair loss, it was too late. There's no doubt that it's easier to keep the hair you have than to replace the hair you've lost. And you have to ask yourself, how will you feel a year from now if it's not business as usual up top? When you experience that bald spot, when you start to see your hairline recede, you're going to wish that you had gone to hims.com. It's a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, sexual wellness for men. They connect you with real doctors and medical-grade solutions to treat hair loss. And this is real stuff. We're not talking about snake oils or gas station pills. These are prescription solutions backed by science. Products are shipped directly to your door. So right now, our listeners can get a trial month of Hims for just $5 today. Right now, while supplies last, see website for full details. This would cost hundreds of dollars if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy. So go to forhims.com/TCAT. That's forhims.com/TCAT. forhims.com/TCAT. Don't wait. Now, on April 12, 1990, a woman comes up to him. She's drunk. She's carrying a baby. And the next thing that happens is the woman and the baby end up in his car. She tells Jesperson that her name is Jean and that she has a 6-month-old son. During this conversation, Jesperson tells her his full name, tells her other information about himself, where he worked, where he was going. And then somehow the conversation turned to sex. They drive to a remote area, and this woman starts giving Jesperson oral sex, but stops and says that she wants to go home. She's asking him to drive her home. He forces her to finish the act, and obviously she's not happy about this. She's fighting him, and he gets very angry. and he tries to snap her neck, but he's unsuccessful. It doesn't work. He doesn't want to kill the child. And so he actually takes this woman and the child back to the shopping center where he picked them up, and he drops them off. The problem is he gave her all these personal details, including his name.
Oh, wow.
So she goes to the police. The police are able to track him down pretty easily. He's interrogated, comes up with a story about, what happened to her neck, and it was an accident. The car was pretty small. And I guess he was pretty convincing in this interview or in this interrogation because they let him go. But they do end up filing a sexual assault charge on him, but he doesn't show up to court. And because of that, a felony warrant is issued. He's later arrested in Iowa, in his truck at a weigh station. They run his name through the database. It comes back that he has a warrant in California. But the case against him, I guess, was weak. So the charge got reduced down to a misdemeanor. And the officials in California thought the cost wasn't worth it to extradite him back. So they just dropped all the charges. So according to Jesperson, the next murder that he committed was sometime in late July, early August of 1992. And there was an unidentified woman who was found on August 30th of that year, about 10 miles north of Blythe, California. And they would determine that she had been dead for a few weeks. They also determined that she had been raped and strangled, but they didn't know who she was. So she became a Jane Doe. And it would only be later that Jesperson would connect the dots, and he didn't even know her full name. The only thing that he would tell authorities was that her name was Claudia. The month after that, the body of Cynthia Lynn Rose, 32 years old, was found along Highway 99 near Turlock, California. She had been dead for some time. Now, they originally listed her death as a drug overdose. And there's going to be a couple of women found that they initially think died from a drug overdose. But it's about this time that Jesperson began writing letters to the media. And in particular, he wrote to this specific columnist at the Oregonian newspaper, which is in Portland. And he claimed responsibility for some of these murders, including Rose. And he wrote multiple letters. One letter, he claimed that Rose was a sex worker that he had picked up in his truck, and he murdered her. But the story that he tells is that she climbed up into his truck. He told her that he wasn't interested. He didn't want to pay for sex. But I guess she wouldn't leave him alone. Now, take all of this with a grain of salt, right? All of this comes from Keith Jesperson.
Right.
But he became enraged and he choked her to death. Now, like he had done in the bathroom stalls, he signed all of these letters with a happy face. And it's really this guy at the Oregonian who was getting all of these letters that came up with the name, the Happy Face Killer. So they turned the letters over to police, but there's not much to go on to help identify who's writing these letters. His next victim was Lori Ann Pentland. She was 26 years old. Her body was found November of 1992 in Salem, Oregon, which is about 50 miles south of Portland. Her body was found out behind a store. And according to Jesperson, she was a sex worker that tried to double the fee that they had agreed upon. He got upset. She threatened to call the police, and he couldn't let that happen. And he strangled her.
Her attitude was like her wife was all ill and she didn't want to be around, and she wanted me to feel sorry for her. And I just, I could kill you, put you out of your misery. And she said, go for it. So I did. Well, I told her that, if your life's so bad, why don't you just end it?
So Jesperson talking about Lori Pentland, and again, Gibbs, you got to take everything this guy says and wonder how much of it is the truth.
In other interviews, other killers and right? They like to hear themselves talk, and they dress things up. But then, like some of them, I think, like Dahmer, I think when he spoke, he was just saying what really happened.
Matter of factly, this is what happened.
Yeah, but I think you get these other guys, and I think they just like to run.
They like to run their mouth, but
Yeah.
You're right. They also like to dress it up. They like to put a spin on it that makes them look just a little bit better. Not that they didn't kill the person, but that they killed them because, as he's saying, she didn't like her life. She wanted to end her life. Almost like I did her a favor. That's the way it sounds. It would be more than 6 months later until the next victim was found. So it's July of 1993. And this was another Jane Doe. They couldn't identify this woman. She was found west of Santanella, California, on a state highway. And this is another victim that police originally thought had died from a drug overdose. And that would have been the end of it.
But
The police reopened her case later, looked at it again, ruled it a homicide because in one of the happy face killer letters, Jesperson mentioned that he killed what he called street person. And this caused them to think about this Jane Doe, and they reopened the case. Now, he would later, say that he did murder this person. And then it's a whole nother year goes by. So now we're into September of 1994. Another Jane Doe is found, but this time down in Florida, Crestview, Florida. Jesperson would later claim that her name was Suzanne and that he had strangled her. So again, at the time, right, the timeline's strange on these. We're going in order of when the victims were found, but in some of the cases we do, a lot of the information doesn't come out until after the person is captured. And that's what happened in this case.
right.
Later in 1994, the Oregonian newspaper received a 6-page letter, same handwriting, same smiley face as the other ones they had received. And this time, the person that wrote the letter says that he's killed 6 people, 5 in Oregon, 1 in California. But in the letter, he says, I feel bad, but I will not turn myself in. I am not stupid. In a lot of opinions, I should be killed, and I feel I deserve it. My responsibility is mine, and God will be my judge when I die. I'm telling you this because I will be responsible for these crimes and no one else. It all started when I wondered what it would be like to kill someone, and I found out. What a nightmare it has been. And then at the end of this letter, Gibbs, it says, look over your shoulder. I'm closer than you think. Right? That might be a little spooky if you're the guy reading this letter.
Absolutely. You ever feel like someone's behind you watching you?
I don't, because I usually sit with my back to a wall
Yeah.
or something like that.
You never had that feeling, though?
Oh, I've had the feeling before, sure.
The hair stands up on your neck and you like, somebody around? Somebody near
I
me?
don't get that feeling.
You don't ever?
No,
Huh.
not the hair like standing up on the back of my neck,
Yeah.
that kind of.
If you took a walk at nighttime, you never felt like someone was right there behind you?
First of all, I don't walk at nighttime. I don't do a lot of walking, period.
You don't walk in the daytime.
Given my physique.
Well, that's
but,
true. You're just naturally that way.
I'm not much of a night walker.
So, that's good. All right. So you never seen Dead People either?
I've seen the movie I See Dead People,
Yeah, that's a good movie, man.
but no, I've never seen anything that I would consider supernatural.
Okay.
Never seen anything that I would question as anything like that.
Nothing.
Nothing.
All right. There's that.
In January of 1995, Jesperson agreed to take a young woman, Angela Surprise, from Spokane, Washington to Indiana in his truck. She was with him for about a week on this trip. But after this week, week into it, Jesperson would say that Surprise became very impatient with him. She started to nag him. She wanted to get to the final destination. And in one instance in particular, He wanted to stop at a truck stop just east of Cheyenne, Wyoming to get some sleep. She started nagging him. She didn't want to stop. She wanted to keep going, and he strangled her. She got on his nerves, and he strangled her. But he didn't do it in a way that I would think of as strangling. When you think of strangling somebody with your bare hands, I think of going around the neck, one hand on each side, and squeezing. That's what I picture in my head.
Yeah.
Jesperson takes his big old fist, which I assume he had a big fist at 6'6", 240.
Yeah, had to.
Pressed it against her throat.
Yeah.
And just pushed and held it until she died.
That would work as well if you have the strength.
But I've never heard of that. I've never seen that in a movie. I've never heard it described that way.
You'd have to be really strong, right? For that person not to shake out of that.
And a big fist, right? Some surface area, I would think.
Yeah. I don't have a big fist, but powerful.
Always have to throw that in there.
Yeah.
This was a big, powerful man. We talked about it. After he strangled Angela, he went to sleep for a few hours. And that's something in and of itself. I mean, you've just killed a person, and now you're going to take a nap. Most people couldn't do that. They would be so amped up. They would be terrified at what they had just done. Somebody like Keith Jesperson, he doesn't give it a second thought.
He just says, nap time.
He could have just as easily have eaten a Big Mac, and now he's going to take a nap.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's that much different to him. But when he wakes up, he starts to drive, and he makes it into Nebraska, stops at a rest area. And this part of the story is almost unbelievable, as if it's made up, but it's not, because Jesperson takes Angela's body out of the truck, straps her to the underside of the truck, underneath, using nylon cord.
Okay.
Face down.
Okay. Not good.
He says that he drove about 10 or 12 miles, dragging this woman face down, specifically, as he says, to grind off her face and prints.
Wow.
I've never heard of anything like that.
No. It's like something off one of those bad
B horror movies.
Yeah. When those two guys were making fun of the truck driver using a girl's voice, Candyman?
The one where you say his name 3 times and he appears?
No.
That's Candyman.
Is that Candyman? No, this is the trucker one where the, two
Jeepers Creepers?
Is that what it is?
I don't know.
It's
a
a horror flick that the two guys start using the CB and they start acting like he's a girl, enticing the truck driver, and then the trucker finds out who he is and comes after him and does some weird stuff, man, to everybody within their lives.
I don't know. I'm just naming off
Yeah.
horror movies that I can think of. But this is something, you're right. This is something that you would see almost in a bad flick and think, oh my gosh, that's so cheesy. That would never happen in real life. This happened in real life.
I felt that by dragging her under the truck, that I would destroy all evidence of who her identity was.
Now that one I believe. I think he is flat out just telling the absolute truth there.
Yep.
That he dragged this woman under the truck to try to ensure that nobody could ever figure out who she was. And again, I go back, that's one of the more horrific things when you think about, now she was already dead at the time, but still horrible.
That's terrible, man.
So after he drives this 10, 12 miles, he stops the truck, unties her body, and puts it in a ditch by the side of the road. Now, he's about 250 miles away from the truck stop where he killed Angela Surprise when all of this part happens. And her body is not found for several months. And even then, it's only found after Jesperson gives authorities details. the body would be positively identified as Angela Surprise through tattoos and x-rays. That's the only way they could identify her.
That's terrible, man.
True Crime All the Time is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know, folks, therapy can feel like a big investment, but let's think about the state of your mind. It's just as important as your physical health. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up really fast. But with BetterHelp Online Therapy, you can save on average up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and time. And you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. I've used the BetterHelp service for years. And I love the fact that, I can connect with a therapist in a comfortable spot in my home on my laptop. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/TCAT today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/TCATT. Even the smallest step forward can make a big difference in your financial future. When you open a Chime checking account, you're one step closer to a better financial future with no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Making progress has never been easier. I think we've all been in that position where we've had an overdraft. Well, with Chime, you can overdraft up to $200 with no fees. That's amazing. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/TCAT. That's chime.com/TCATT. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Crime checking account required. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. It's only a couple of months after Jesperson murdered Surprise that he starts to believe that his longtime girlfriend, this is a woman by the name of Julie Ann Winningham, is only into him for his money. Now, he's had issues with females. We know that.
Right.
He had issues when he was young. His marriage didn't end well. Now he starts having issues with his current girlfriend. And on March 10th, 1995, she would become his 8th victim. This is in Washougal, Washington.
Yeah.
He strangled her. Julianne Winningham was 41 years old, and her nude body would be found down an embankment along Highway 14. But Keith Jesperson had made a huge mistake because we talked about this, right? He's a trucker. He's picking up women that he has no connection to. But now he's killed his girlfriend. So for the first time, he's killed someone with whom he had a connection. And there are a lot of people, there's friends, there's family that know the two were seeing each other. And some people provided Jesperson's name to police after Julianne's body is found. And he's arrested on March 30th, 1995 for the murder of Winningham. Police had been questioning him for a little while, but they, at the time, didn't have enough to arrest him earlier. He wasn't talking to them. But after he was interrogated a couple of times in the days leading up to his arrest, he knew that they were going to come for him. He just knew it. And he tried to commit suicide a couple of times, unsuccessfully. And then all of a sudden, Gibbs, he turned himself in. I think his thought process was, they're going to get me. They know who I am. If I turn myself in, I'll be better off. But as soon as he's in custody, he starts giving out details not just of the murder of Julianne Winningham, but all of these other murders that he's committed. And not just the 8 we've talked about. He starts talking about all kinds of murders. Now, he's going to recant a lot of these, but he writes 2 letters. He writes one to his children and one to his brother. And in the letter to his brother, it says, "Seems like my luck has run out. I will never be able to enjoy life on the outside again. I got into a bad situation and got caught up with emotion. I killed a woman in my truck during an argument. With all of the evidence against me, it looks like I truly am a black sheep. The court will appoint me a lawyer and there will be a trial. I'm sure they will kill me for this. I'm sorry that I turned out this way. I have been a killer for 5 years and have killed 8 people, assaulted more. I guess I haven't learned anything." So he writes this in a letter to his brother. When he's taken back to Washington, he calls his brother and over the phone tells him to destroy the letter that he sent. But his brother doesn't do it. He talks to an attorney. He talks to his father. They both say, you need to give this to police. And that's what he does. And this letter is published back during that time frame in newspapers. But what it does is it causes police in a lot of different areas and in many states to reopen some of their cold cases, thinking that, there could be a lot of these cases that are possible victims of Keith Jesperson. In October of 1995, right before his trial was getting ready to start, Jesperson pleaded guilty to the murder of Julianne Winningham in Washington, and he received a life sentence. Then he was sent to Oregon. He entered a no contest plea for the murder of Tanya Bennett, and he received a life sentence for that as well. But you have to look at the reason why he would plead guilty to the murder of Tanya Bennett. He's confessing to murders in places where he was more likely to get life because he's trying to avoid some of these places that would most likely put him to death.
So he's being calculated.
He's being very calculating about this, and he would come out and talk about it later. He ends up, playing what you'd have to call like a cat and mouse game with authorities. But the confession to the murder of Tanya Bennett is important for a number of reasons. But let's go back to Laverne and John. This is over 4 years since they were convicted. And it's on November 27th, 1995, that they actually get released from prison. Based on this confession by Keith Jesperson. And it's not just his words, because that might not have been enough to do it. He gave authorities something very specific, and it was the location of Tanya Bennett's purse. This had never been found, and so the authorities knew this is something that only the killer would know, and he knew it. He knew where it was, and once he gave them that, they set Laverne and John free. But they both spent over 4 years in prison for something that they didn't do.
Yeah.
Something that Laverne concocted to try to get out of this relationship that she didn't want to be in. Jesperson also received a life sentence in Oregon for the murder of Lori Petlin. And I mentioned the fact that he's trying to stay out of some of these states that he thought would put him to death. And it took about 2 years of going through the legal system before the state of Wyoming was able to get their hands on him. They wanted to put him on trial for the brutal murder of Angela Surprise. But this is where his cat and mouse game really comes into play, because they're getting ready to put him on trial. He starts telling them that he didn't kill Angela in Wyoming. He actually killed her in Nebraska, right? That's where he drove to. That's where her body was. So very strange situation that these prosecutors are in, because there's a chance this could really put a monkey wrench into their case.
Potentially.
Because he had said a number of things. He had said he killed her in Wyoming. He had said he killed her in Nebraska. At this point, I think it's hard for them to know exactly what the truth was. He's deliberately trying to mislead them or to confuse them about which jurisdiction had the right to prosecute him. It's not the fact that they don't know he did it. It's who has the legal right to actually prosecute him. But in the end, a deal is worked out. And the deal is Jesperson will plead guilty to murdering Angela Surprise in Wyoming, which is what he really did, if they would agree to take the death penalty off the table. And they do. So it's on June 3rd, 1998, that he is sentenced to life in prison. And this life sentence is to run consecutive to the other life sentences that he has in Oregon and Washington. Because that's the other thing, right? He doesn't care about another life sentence.
Mm-mm.
All he cares about is avoiding the death penalty.
Exactly.
He already has 3 life sentences. What's one more that he's never going to technically serve?
Yeah, it's all game anyway to him.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he's never getting out. I mean, they're never going to let Keith Jesperson out. He's going to die in prison. So after this is all over, he gets the life sentence in Wyoming. He's immediately taken back to the Oregon State Penitentiary. How do you say that state, Gibbs?
Oregon.
Oh, okay. That really fires people up.
It does.
When you say that.
But yet they're okay with how I say penitentiary.
Yeah, I have trouble with that one.
Yeah. Penitentiary.
It sounds like you have trouble with it too.
Penitentiary.
Penitentiary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I think there's too many letters in there.
You just want to call it the big house.
I want to say it the way it's written, like I say names that end up being wrong.
Yeah, you do that a lot.
There's a hard R in that word, you know?
Hey, there was a hard R.
That cracked me up.
Sorry it happened. Wish it never happened. And can we move on?
Can we move on?
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, it's done. It's over with.
How would you feel if somebody did this to your daughter?
Well, I would probably search him down and kill him. Yes, I'd like to go back in time and change it and make it all go away and make it all peaches and cream again, but I can't do that. At the time, I could justify each and every one of those murders, and at this time, I cannot.
So that's Jesperson. I think that's an interview he did with CBS. Is he remorseful? I don't know.
I don't think so. Can we just move on?
I know that part was
on?
very... Can we just stop talking about the fact that I killed...
It's like a bad
bunch of women?
Couples fight, you know? The one of the spouse says that, you know? Where the other
Can you
spouse
just get over it? Can you just move on?
Yeah, can we just move on? Why are we still talking about this? It is what it is. It's done.
Yeah, I don't think he's remorseful. I think he's sorry he got caught. And I think you would say that about a lot of the people that we talk about on True Crime all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think they have true remorse for the really horrible things that they did. I just think they're sorry they got caught and they lost their freedom and they lost the ability to keep doing those horrible things.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I think.
But he definitely likes to have control, and he's not having control, but he's trying to act like he has control.
Yeah, I think the control was a big part of it. I mean, look back at the murder of Tanya Bennett. There was 2 people in prison for that murder. He didn't like that. He didn't like the fact that somebody else, and I don't want to use the word got credit because that's not the right way. You know, somebody else took the blame for something that he would have wanted credit for, maybe is a better way to say it.
Right.
You know, he wanted to control that situation, and ultimately he did. He tried to even when he was out, right? By writing on the bathroom stalls, by writing the letters. But Jesperson, he has claimed a lot of victims. And this is where it gets really tough with him, I think, for authorities to separate out fact from fiction. Because at different points in time, the number of victims that he's talked about is like in the area of 160.
crazy, man.
Now, did he really kill 160 people? Or does he just like to talk about it and say that he did and get people talking? And
Well, it could be a little bit of both, you know? I'm sure the numbers are up there.
I'm sure it's probably more than 8.
So,
But in the end, it's only the 8 women in California, Florida, Nebraska, Oregon, Washington, Wyoming, only the ones there that have been confirmed. He's serving out his consecutive life sentences at the Oregon State Penitentiary, which is located in Salem, Oregon. And unless the only reason he would ever leave there is if they move him. Like I said, nobody's ever letting Keith Jesperson walk the streets again.
right. But he might be listening to this.
He might be. If he is, call Gibby. He'd love to talk to you.
Do a little interview.
We talked a little bit about the fact that he had 3 kids.
Sure.
And his daughter, Melissa, has come out. I think she wrote a book. She definitely did the interview circuit talking about her dad, talking about her childhood growing up with Keith Jesperson.
He would hang my pets. For instance, it was in one case, it was some kittens that I had found in the cellar that I was pretending. I was just a little girl. I was 6 years old, and I found them, and I was playing house with them, and I was pretending I was the mom, and I had taken the little kittens outside, and my dad had hung them on the clothesline and was torturing them, and that was one really dark and horrible day.
I would say that would be a horrible day.
It absolutely would be a horrible day.
I don't know how old she was. I think she was around 10 when her mom left. So I'm thinking younger than 10 when this happened.
Yeah.
So you have that experience, and then you have the experience of finding out that your dad was this brutal serial killer. I can't imagine what that would be like. And Melissa talks about it, how her mom gathered the kids up one day and basically had to tell them that, you're going to see it on the news. You're going to hear it at school. Your dad has been arrested and he's this monster. But that's it, Gibbs. That is the story of Keith Jesperson.
Terrible guy, man.
He was.
Terrible.
He was. He was from a very young age.
Yeah. Just a brutal monster, man.
We've got some voicemails. Maybe we'll cleanse it a little bit with that. You want to do that?
See if we can.
All right.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, it's Erin from Anderson, South Carolina calling again. So this is something completely unrelated to the content in the podcast, apart from talking about the actor Sam Rockwell. I just thought it was funny that you guys are going back and forth today about him, and you looked it up. But that really brings up a great point. Sam Rockwell actually won the Best Supporting Actor for his role this year in 3 Billboards Over Ebbing, Missouri, which is a kind of faux crime story. But it's actually really interesting, and I think that both of you would enjoy that movie if you haven't seen it. And also, Gibby can get his fix of Sam Rockwell. But anyways, I just wanted to let you guys know I'm continuing to enjoy the podcast, both of them. You guys do a great job, and keep your own time ticking. Thanks, guys.
All right. Awesome. Love the voicemail. Now, she did call back later, Gibbs. I didn't play it.
Okay.
Called back later just to correct the name of the movie, that it's actually 3 Billboards Outside.
Yeah, I've seen previews
Missouri.
for it.
It's supposed to be really good.
Yeah.
I just like the fact that she recognized your man crush on Sam Rockwell.
There's no man crush there.
There's a definite man crush.
No.
You talked about him quite a bit.
I think I talked about Nick Cage more, but okay.
Well, maybe you got a man crush for
I
both
just said
of them.
Sam, he always does this little foot
yeah,
dance.
you talked about his dance.
Little foot dance move.
Yeah, there was you talked about him in a glowing way. Let's put it that way.
Glowing.
I do like Sam Rockwell. He's a good actor.
Hi, this is Liz, and I am actually from the northwest corner of Iowa, and I just listened to the Robert Hansen case. And I happen to run a business in Esterville, Iowa, which is pretty fascinating because he is a part of town folklore here. And I actually know people who knew him and his family. So every once in a while at work, I'll hear them talk about him and what he did and how he was here. So it's pretty fascinating. But I do know another case, a couple of them here out of Esterville. One is the case of Gregory Scott Erickson, who was a 15-year-old young man who had gotten himself into kind of a bad situation with some bad people, and the police used him as an informant. And unfortunately, he ended up murdered. It's still kind of an ongoing thing. It's been 20 years ago, and he just kind of is always on everybody's mind. It was kind of a thing where the police kind of didn't do quite what they should, and there's a major Mexican drug cartel involved. So might be one to check out. Another one here, which is still ongoing, is the case of Lee Christensen, who happened to kill another young man here in town. And that's still kind of an ongoing thing, but just thought you'd find it absolutely fascinating because Esterville tends to have a little bit of this in the northwest corner of Iowa. So thanks, guys. Bye.
Gibbs, what is going on in Esterville, Iowa?
Well, I don't know, but Liz is on top of it.
We need to fly you out there pronto.
Pronto.
Check it out.
Let me see what's going on.
I love to hear, though, I've said it before, I love to hear from people that, have some type of connection to the people that we cover.
Yeah.
Hanson was born or grew up in Esterville. And as you can imagine, people still talk about him there, what he was like, what his family was like.
It definitely adds a layer of, what's the word I want to use? Adds a layer of...
Sam Rockwell?
Sam Rockwell. Okay, then.
That's a layer of what?
I'm just going to let it go.
Because you can't think of it. Well, I can't just leave it like that.
A layer of intrigue.
To the story?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, when people know, have a little personal touch to it.
Yeah, I think it does add something, Sam Rockwell.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. This is Katie Lou. I've called once before, long-time listener. Me and my guy listen religiously. Anywho, I was listening the other day to your Robert Hansen one that takes place in Alaska, and it's the Knik River, not the Nick River. The K is not silent, and it's absolutely beautiful. If you were to hide a body anywhere, why not? It's gorgeous. Anyways, thanks. Bye.
I think she almost felt bad, Gibbs, calling to let me know that I had mispronounced it. I could hear it in her voice.
She's like, I don't want to, but I think you need to know.
Yeah, and we do need to know. And I actually did feel bad about that because it was such a central part to the case that I got it wrong. I felt bad. If I get one name wrong and we never say it again, all right, I can live with that.
Yeah.
But to get the river wrong when it was such a big part of the case, I really did feel bad.
I don't know how you jacked that up. Anyway.
I don't know. I really biffed it, though.
Hey, guys, I had to stop the podcast. This is Jerry Ward, truck driving guy. I gotta say, Gibby, I love you. I was just listening to the new episode, and you said Maggie's back, and I started singing Maggie's back again, just like Eminem. Yeah. Anyways, guys, still love the podcast. You're doing a great job. Gibby gets feeling better. Mikey, if I get a chance, I'm going to stop and get you some Harley chips from around the country. And either way, guys, keep it up. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Man, he's going to love this episode.
Yeah, that's one of the good truck drivers.
That is. That's one of our truck driving buddies right there.
Absolutely.
And he's using his crisscrossing of the country maybe to pick me up some Harley chips.
Yeah.
That's what you should be using it for.
Yeah, he's great, man. Him and his wife are good.
But
good
definitely,
folks.
yeah, definitely, give us a call back. Clue us in on the technology today in, some of these trucks and with the different carriers.
Yeah, it's probably different if you're independent or
and I don't
if you're
know.
With a large, organization.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's different if you're driving for Walmart and they want to know where you're at every second of the day or something.
Yeah, versus, your own self,
But anyway, anybody that can shed some light on it, I would be
It shall be shedded.
It shall be shedded.
It shall be shedded.
All right, Gibbs, that's it for the voicemails.
What's in the box? I mean, what's in the mail?
What's in the box?
Yeah, what's in the box?
What's in the box? So what we got in the mail this week?
Yeah.
Got some chips.
Okay.
We got a chip from Cynthia in Anchorage, Alaska.
You say we, you mean you. You're not sharing these chips with me.
You can have some of the chips if you want.
I know. You're not going to let me tell you. You
heart.
say you can have some of these chips. As soon as we're off air, you're like, get away from the effing chips, buddy. They're mine.
I did get something from, I can't remember who it was, a message that says Gibby needs to collect something so that he can get stuff in the mail too. Now, we did get mugs last week.
Yeah, we got mugs.
We loved.
Yeah. You know what to send me.
Just surprise Gibby. He likes surprises.
Yeah. Well, I don't want I don't want the real what's in the box.
No, we don't want those kind of surprises.
No.
But Cynthia, after listening to the Robert Hansen episode, she's in Anchorage.
Yeah.
She gets me an Anchorage chip.
That's cool.
Goes with the episode.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It is awesome.
And then Dawn sent me a couple of chips from different places in Oregon.
Okay.
Kind of goes with this episode.
Yeah. Some chips from Oregon.
That she didn't know about.
She didn't know about.
I can't say that. I can't repeat what you just said, even though I want to. I physically can't say the state that way. My brain won't let the word come out that way for some reason.
I don't know how. It just happens.
It just happens. All right. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Sam Rockwell.
Hey now.
In the early hours of December 4th, 2024, CEO Brian Thompson stepped out onto the streets of Midtown Manhattan.
This assailant pulls out a weapon and starts firing at him.
We're talking about the CEO of the biggest private health insurance corporation in the world.
And the suspect,
he has been identified as Luigi Nicholas Mangione,
became one of the most divisive figures in modern criminal history.
It was targeted, premeditated, and meant to sow terror.
I'm Jesse Weber, host of Luigi, produced by Law and Crime and Twist. This is more than a true crime investigation. We explore a uniquely American moment that could change the country forever.
He's awoken the people to a true issue.
Finally, maybe this would lead rich and powerful people to acknowledge the barbaric nature of our healthcare system.
Listen to Law and Crime's Luigi exclusively on Wondery Plus. You can join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.